different topic now about cost. Yesterday we saw this financial model of a business, how we got fixed costs and variable costs, and the two add up to be a total cost. And we introduced a breakdown for this business. And we had to, and I mentioned the cost of a breakdown is the total cost the business suffers. You know, I can repair a breakdown and have a maintenance cost for that repair, a direct maintenance cost. Materials, labour, supervision, so I can cost that as a maintenance value quite easily. What I can't cost is everything else the company lost or paid for that there is no value to show. That's the value we have to use in our risk costing assessment. And I call that value the defect and failure true cost or defect and failure total cost. I don't mind what you call it. I left the acronym DAFT on purpose because we can drop the A and call it DFT cost so nobody's offended, but I thought, gee, it is daft. It is daft to live in a company where you don't understand the cost of a breakdown to your business. So left it as daft costs. Some guys don't like it because daft implies that we're not managing properly. Yes, we're not managing properly, but you call it what you want to call it. The whole point is it's all the costs the company will lose that we want to know when we start measuring the risk to the business. So I sat down and began writing what sort of costs can a company lose in a breakdown. There are, I think, 65 different costs. Now, not all 65 will happen in every single breakdown. Now, there'll be costs for additional labour, unnecessary overtime. There'll be waste of product, perhaps some scrapping. There could be some reprocessing. When it comes to additional services, I have to get a subcontractor in or get a contract welder to come back on site. I've got to pay subcontractors, pay their travelling. I have to pay for consultants. And you know, these costs arise because once the machine's broken down, I've got to get it working. I've got no choice. And I'll pay whatever I've got to pay to get the machine back in service. And there'll be materials costs, there'll be equipment costs. There'll be, if the machine process is a hot process, I've got to cool that whole machine down, then all the energy that was in the machine, I've just lost the energy. Had to take a hot process down to cool conditions to be able to work on it. Then I've got to reheat the whole thing up again on restart. So I'm going to lose energy to reheat the machine. That energy has to be paid for, and of course the company pays for that. Does that cost of reheating the machine appear in the cost of the breakdown? Most companies wouldn't even think about it. Yet the business will pay for that without question. Over here, consequential costs. In our business we lost because we couldn't sell the product we could have made in the time that it was broken down. Or penalty fees from clients because we've now affected their business and they're going to penalise us for their losses. There's an interesting one here, administration. Now my invoice matching people are on the breakdown. Over here, an administration person here. So 1 month after the breakdown, all the invoices come in from the contractors and from the suppliers of the parts. So now 1 month after the breakdown's been addressed, the people in accounts are working on the breakdown because they've got the invoice, got to match purchase orders against the invoice, got to pay the invoice, all because the break happened. So the truth is, companies, when we have a breakdown, every department has an effect. If I've got to ring the client and say, look, Mr. Client, I'm sorry, we've got a breakdown in the plant, you're going to be 2 days late with your product. Now my sales guy is on the breakdown. And my client now knows that we have unreliable plant. They had to ring up and say, we can't meet the order that we promised we'd give you some months ago. So we have to recognise as a business, there's a huge cost surge from failure. Failure is terribly expensive. This is where yesterday I mentioned a ratio of between 7 and 15 times the direct maintenance cost. If I can find a ratio, because direct maintenance cost is easy to calculate. What I can't calculate is everything else that I have no value for, but the company will pay for. So I wanted to get some sort of ratio, and I came down to 1 in 10 times. That's typically fair enough for process plants. Batch plants are a little bit different. Batch plants, because they are a localised issue, the knock-on effect normally isn't so much. With a batch plant, I normally say about 5, about half the process plant cost. Now that was from my testing of this in one of the companies I worked at.